I can set a full supper on this table right now, out of about nothing. A little flour, a little grease, a cup of water, that's gravy. A cold biscuit under it, and a man's fed. I've done it more times than I can count, and there was a stretch of years where it wasn't a trick, it was Thursday. The people who raised me came up hard, and then the whole country came down to meet 'em. 1929. By the time it was over, a quarter of the men in this country had no work, and up in these hollers there wasn't much work to lose in the first place. What there was a garden, a hog if you were lucky, a creek, and a grandmother who knew how to make 5 people believe they'd eaten. Here's the twist. Number 21 kept a family from a disease that was killing thousands a year, and the government figured that out and made it cost a nickel. Number 12, you had to cook right, or it'd put you in the ground, and they ate it anyway. And number 1, one old hen fed 9 people, and nobody left the table hungry. Let's count down 25 forgotten Depression meals Appalachian grandmas made from nothing. Number 25, fried potatoes and onions. This is the one everybody's grandmother made, and it was supper as often as it was a side. You cut potatoes thin, skin on, and onion in with them, and you laid them in a skillet with grease already smoking. The trick nobody tells you is patience. You leave 'em be. You crowd the pan and stir it, you get a gray steamed mess. You give it room and let it sit, you get a brown crust on the bottom of each slice, and that crust is the whole meal. Ma salted them going in, not after, so the salt drew a little moisture and the outside crisped. A nickel of potatoes and half an onion fed the young'uns, and if there was a single egg in the house, it went on top and got cut 5 ways. Number 24, tomato gravy over biscuits. Come winter, the fresh was gone, but there were jars. Ma would take a spoon of grease, brown a spoon of flour in it till it smelled like toast, and pour in a quart of home-canned tomatoes, juice and all. It thickened into a red gravy, sweet and a little sharp, and it went over a split biscuit. That's it. No meat in it, no meat needed. The flour and the fat carried the tomato, and the tomato made you feel like you'd had something out of a garden in the dead of February. Brown the flour too little, and it tastes raw and pasty. The failure is always fear of the heat. My mother stood over that skillet and did not walk away from it, because the second you walk away, the flour scorches and the whole pan goes bitter. Number 23, milk toast. Torn bread, hot milk poured over it, little butter, little salt or sugar. That was milk toast. And it was what you got when you were sick or when there was truly nothing else in the house. At the lunch counters, they had a name for it that tells you everything. They called it graveyard stew because it's what you fed a body too poorly to chew. But it filled a child up warm, and warm and full will get you through a night. Ma made it with the heel of the loaf and the top of the milk, the cream part. And to a young'un running a fever, it tasted like being taken care of. Number 22, the poor man's sandwich. 2 pieces of bread and whatever was between 'em. And some nights what was between 'em was a raw onion, sliced thin, salt, and a scrape of grease or drippings. That's the whole thing. There's a name from those years, a wish sandwich. You held 2 slices of bread and wished there was something in the middle. Now I don't want to make it sound noble, because it wasn't. It was hunger. But a mountain woman could take a cold biscuit, rub the inside with bacon grease and press a little sugar in it, and hand it to a boy going to school, and that boy thought he had something. That's the skill, not the food. Making the food feel like enough. Number 21, salmon patties. Now here's one where they were flat proved right. A can of salmon in those years cost about a nickel, on account of the government dropped the price on purpose. Ma mashed the whole can, bones and all, crushed in a few crackers or a spoon of meal, and 1 egg, and fried the patties in grease. Here's the part they didn't know they knew. That 1 egg and that fish, served once a week alongside the cornbread, carried enough of a certain something to keep a family of 4 from pellagra, the disease that comes off eating nothing but corn. They weren't chemists. They just noticed the folks who ate a little fish stayed well, and they kept doing it. The bones mash right in and you never feel 'em, and that's where near all the good is. Number 20, boiled cabbage and cornbread. A head of cabbage was cheap. It kept in the cellar for months, and it would fill a pot. You cut it in wedges, put it in with a piece of fat back, or just a spoon of grease and some salt, and let it go soft and sweet. Then you crumble cornbread into the pot liquor at the bottom. That liquor is not to be thrown out. It's where half the cabbage went. A big pot of it cost pennies and fed everybody twice, once hot and once warmed over. Cook it too hard and too long, and it turns to a smell that'll clear the house and a mush that's lost its heart. So you pull it while there's still a little bite. Cabbage and bread got more mountain families through more winters than anybody wants to remember. Number 19, Hoover stew. This one wears the president's name, and not as a compliment. In the shanty towns, they called them Hoovervilles because folks blamed him. A stew got passed around the soup kitchens made of boiled macaroni, sliced wieners, canned tomatoes, and whatever beans or corn there was. I'll be honest with you, this wasn't really a mountain dish, and the wieners in it made it near a luxury because it had meat. A family that could put a little meat in a pot was doing better than most. But it spread everywhere hard times went, and plenty of people up here ate a version of it, and they ate it grateful. The name was a joke, but there was nothing funny about needing it. That's the everyday suppers. From here we get into the ones that took a little more knowing. The sweets made out of nothing, the meat off the land, the stretch. If this is the kind of thing worth keeping, subscribe. I put one of these up every few days. Number 18, sorghum sop and a cold biscuit. When there was no sugar and no money for it, there was the sorghum jug. A cold biscuit split open, a spoon of that dark syrup poured on, and sopped up. For a lot of children, that was breakfast, and it was supper too. I carried it myself. 31 years I went underground, and a good many mornings my dinner bucket held 2 cold biscuits with sorghum pressed between them, because it didn't spoil, and it gave a man something to burn on a long shift in the cold and the dark. Sorghum's got iron and minerals in it that white sugar hasn't got a bit of, though nobody ate it for that. They ate it because it was sweet and it was theirs, made off their own cane. Let it get cold and it near stops pouring, so you set the jug by the stove. Number 17, egg gravy. Different from the tomato gravy, and I want them apart on this list so you see they're not the same thing. When the hens were laying and there wasn't much else, Ma beat 2 or 3 eggs into a skillet of milk gravy right at the end and stirred hard so they set up in little ribbons through it. It stretched 2 eggs across a whole family, poured over biscuits or over bread. The stretch is the whole point of it. You're taking a couple eggs, which is a small thing, and making them cover a table. Stir too slow or too late and you get scrambled eggs floating in milk instead of a smooth gravy. And it's still good, it's just not the trick. Done right, it's silk, and it looks like you had plenty. Number 16, grassland bread. Come hog killing time, you rendered the fat down for lard, and what was left in the bottom of the kettle was the cracklings, little crisp brown bits of skin and meat. Nothing got thrown out on a mountain place, so those cracklings went into the cornbread. I stood at that rendering kettle as a boy, and it was my job to keep the fire even so the fat didn't scorch. You stir a handful of warm cracklings into the cornmeal batter and bake it, and you get a bread with crisp, salty pockets all through it. A bread that eats like it has meat in it, because it does. The last of it, the part you'd have no other use for. One hog gave a family crackling bread for weeks after the killing. Let the cracklings go cold and hard before you mix them, and they won't fold in, so you work quick while they're warm. Number 15, sweet potato pie. The sweet potato was the mountain's insurance. It grew where corn wouldn't, it kept all winter in a bed of straw, and it was so full of goodness that families near lived on it in the worst stretches. When there was a little sugar and an egg to spare, the grandmother turned it into pie. You boiled the potatoes soft, mashed them with what sweetening you had, an egg, a little milk, whatever spice was in the house, and baked it in a crust. That pie was Sunday. It was the thing that made a poor table feel like a celebration, and it cost near nothing but the flour for the crust. A child who got a wedge of sweet potato pie in 1932 remembered it 70 years. Number 14, fried creek fish. This one was my hands, not the kitchen's. A boy with a hook and a can of worms was a boy bringing home protein, free, and I brought home plenty. Little creek fish, horny heads, red eyes, a sunfish if you were lucky. You cleaned 'em right there on the bank, rolled 'em whole in cornmeal with salt, and Ma dropped 'em in hot grease. You eat them bones and all, small as they are, crisp clean through. A mess of little fish out of the branch turned a supper of just cornbread into a supper with meat on the table, and it didn't cost a cent, only an afternoon. The failure is the grease not being hot enough. Cool grease, and the meal sucks it up, and you've got a greasy, soft mess instead of a crisp one. It's got to be near smoking when the fish goes in. Number 13, scalloped tomatoes. Here's where the stale bread earned its keep. Nobody threw out old bread. It went into this. You layered torn dry bread with home canned tomatoes, a little sugar, salt, a few dots of grease or butter, and baked it till the top browned and the bread underneath drank up all that tomato. It comes out somewhere between a bread pudding and a stew, soft and sweet and sharp at once, and it made a whole dish out of two things you already had and one thing you'd have thrown to the hogs. That's the depression in a pan. The tomato from summer, the bread from yesterday. Nothing bought. Skimp on the baking and the bottom stays soggy and raw tasting, so you give it the full hour and let the top go dark. Now the ones that carried some risk and the ones that carried the most feeling. Number 12, the meat off the land. When the smokehouse was empty and there was no money for the store, a family ate what the woods gave up. Squirrel first, because there were always squirrels. Squirrel and gravy, or squirrel and dumplings, was real supper up here and not a joke. Then rabbit, then, when it came to it, groundhog and possum, and a man wasn't ashamed of it, he was fed. But this is where I have to stop and tell you the truth, because the old way could hurt you. Wild rabbits and groundhogs carry a sickness called tularemia. You can take it just from cleaning the animal with a cut on your hand. And possum, bear, and hog can carry trichinella, a worm that freezing does not always kill in wild game. So here's the modern standard, and you follow it, not the old one. Wear gloves when you clean wild game. If the liver's got little white spots all through it, bury the animal and don't eat it. And cook every bit of it clean through to 165 degrees. Not pink, not about done, done. The old-timers lost people to this and never knew why. We know why now. Eat off the land, but eat smart. Number 11, tea cakes. A tea cake is the plainest cookie there is. Flour, a little sugar, a little fat, an egg if you had one, and that's the whole recipe. No chocolate, no fruit, nothing but the four things every kitchen had a little of. The grandmother rolled 'em thin and baked 'em soft, and a child who came in from school to a plate of warm tea cakes felt rich. That's the thing about these. They weren't much, but for a young'un in 1933, a warm tea cake was the whole of what sweet and safe and home meant. There's grown people in their 90s right now who'll cry telling you about their grandmother's tea cakes, and it isn't the sugar they're crying about. Number 10, potato cakes. Whatever mashed potatoes were left from supper did not get thrown out. They got made into breakfast. You worked a little flour and an egg into the cold mashed potatoes, patted them into cakes, and fried them brown in grease. Crisp outside, soft in the middle. And they turned last night's leftovers into a hot meal that felt brand new. I've eaten them cold, too, out of the dinner bucket down in the mine. And a cold potato cake at the bottom of a shaft is a fine thing when you're hungry and there's rock over your head. The failure is too little flour to bind them. They'll fall to pieces in the pan and you're eating fried crumbs. Enough to hold, not enough to taste. That's the feel of it. Number 9, turnips. The turnip is a poor man's friend and always has been. You sowed them late, they came up fast. They stood in the ground through frost, and one packet of seed fed you 2 ways. The greens off the top and the root down below. The root you peeled and boiled soft and mashed like a potato, with a little grease and salt and pepper, and it filled a bowl for near nothing. It's got a sharp edge to it raw that cooks down sweet and mild. A family with a turnip patch had food in the ground in December when the garden was bare and the shelves were empty, and they could go pull supper up out of the cold dirt. That's about as close to something from nothing as land gets. Number 8, crawdads out of the branch. Here's another one that was a boy's job, mine included. Every rocky branch in these mountains is full of crawdads, and a hungry child learns quick that there's meat in that little tail. You turned the flat rocks in the shallows and grabbed them behind the pinchers, filled a bucket of an afternoon, and boiled them till they turned red. What you get off each one is about a bite in the tail, sweet as any lobster and free for the wading. It took a mess of 'em to make a meal, and it took all day. But a day is what a boy had plenty of, and it was protein pulled out of a creek that cost nobody anything. My cousins and I fed ourselves whole summer afternoons that way, and thought we were getting away with something. Number 7, black-eyed peas and hog jowl. New Year's Day, you ate black-eyed peas and hog jowl for luck, and grains on the side for money. And that tradition is alive in these mountains yet. Now, I'll be straight with you about it. This came up to us from the low country and the coast, where they call it hoppin' john and cook it with rice. But we don't grow rice up here. So up in the hills, it's just the peas and the jowl. And here's the honest part. The luck is a pretty story, but the reason poor mountain people really ate it was that dried peas kept all year, and hog jowl was the cheap cut off the hog nobody else wanted. It fed you cheap in the deep of winter. The luck was just a sugar on top of the arithmetic, but I still eat it every 1st of January, same as my mother did, and I'm not fixing to be the one who stops. Number 6, baked sweet potatoes in the ashes. I put the sweet potato on the list twice on purpose because it was that important. And this is the simplest a meal ever got. You took a sweet potato and buried it in the hot ashes and coals at the edge of the hearth, and you left it. An hour later you raked it out, cracked the black skin, and inside was a thing so sweet and soft you'd swear somebody'd cooked it with sugar, and nobody had. The heat turns the potato's own starch to sugar, slow, right there in the coals. No pan, no pot, no water, nothing but the fire that was already burning to heat the house. A child could cook his own supper in the ashes while his mother worked, and many a child did. Leave it too close to a hot coal, and one side chars to nothing, while the other stays raw. So you bank it in the warm ash, not the fire itself. Number 5, cornmeal dumplings in pot liquor. When you boiled a pot of greens or beans, the liquid left behind, the pot liquor, was not waste. It was the best of it. Into that simmering liquor, Ma dropped stiff little dumplings made of nothing but cornmeal, salt, and hot water, worked into balls, and cooked till they were done through. They soaked up the pot liquor and all the good that had cooked out of the greens into it, and they turned a bowl of broth into a meal that stuck to your ribs. It was the poorest supper on the stove, and near as the doctors can tell now, one of the healthiest, because everything the greens gave up went into that broth and then into those dumplings. Drop them in water that's gone off to boil, and they fall apart into mush, so you keep it rolling. Number 4, stewed rhubarb. They called it the pie plant, and near every mountain place had a clump of it by the back step, because it came up first thing in spring when a body was starved for something fresh and tart after a winter of dried and salted. You cut the red stalks, stewed them down with what sweetening you had, and ate it warm or spooned it over a biscuit, the first sweet and sour thing of the whole year. But hear me on this, because it matters. You eat the stalk and only the stalk. The big leaves are poison. There's an acid in them that'll bind up your body's calcium, and it has killed people. Back in the First War, when the government told folks to eat the leaves like greens, and folks did. Grandmother knew that without knowing why. She'd say, cut the leaf off in the garden and leave it lay, and she was right. Number 3, potato soup. This was the stretch made plain, the meal that took the least and fed the most. A few potatoes, an onion, water, and if there was milk that week, milk, and a lump of grease or butter. You boiled the potatoes and onions soft, mashed some of them right in the pot to thicken it, and let the milk carry the rest. That's it. 2 or 3 potatoes and a cup of milk made a pot of soup that fed a whole family a hot supper. And on a cold night, with cornbread crumbled in it, nobody knew they were eating poverty. This is the one my mother made when the week had gotten away from us, and she made it without a word of apology, because there was no shame in it. It was warm, and it was filling, and it was hers. The whole art of it is the mashing. Mash a few potatoes into the broth, and thin water becomes soup. Mountain women knew that when the arithmetic wouldn't come out any other way. Number 2, sugar bread. The plainest sweet on this whole list, and the one that put the most children to sleep happy. A slice of bread, or a cold biscuit, buttered if there was butter, or greased if there wasn't, and a spoon of sugar pressed into it. That was dessert. That was the treat. A grandmother would hand it to a young'un at the end of a hard day, and to that child it was cake. It cost a spoon of sugar, and it bought a smile you'd remember your whole life. There's not a thing to teach about the making of it. What there is to understand is the woman handing it over. She had near nothing, and out of near nothing she made a child feel spoiled. That's the recipe. The sugar was the least of it. Number 1, chicken and dumplings. Number 1 is the great stretch, the meal that took the whole art and put it in one pot. One old hen, and it fed 9. When a laying hen quit laying, that was the day she went in the pot. And an old bird is tough, so you didn't fry her. You stewed her low and slow, half a day, till the meat give up off the bone. That broth was gold. Then the grandmother made the dumplings out of nothing but flour, a little grease, and some of that broth. Rolled them thin, cut them in strips, and dropped them in to cook up soft and swell. And here's the whole thing. The dumplings are what stretch it. One old hen won't feed a big family. One old hen and a pound of flour rolled into dumplings will, because the body fills up on the dumplings and the broth, and everyone gets a taste of the meat. The failure is rushing the bird. Boil an old hen hard and fast, and she goes to rubber and stays there. You've got to keep it barely moving for hours and let time do what heat can't. That's the part that's gone, not the recipe. Anybody can look up chicken and dumplings. What's gone is the knowing that a single hen and a bowl of flour in the right hands sets 9 people down to a full supper and sends them all away satisfied. My grandmother could look in an empty pantry and see a meal there. That wasn't a recipe. That was a lifetime of doing more with less than anybody should have had to, and she never once let us see it as anything but plenty. Here's my challenge. Pick one, just one. Bake a sweet potato in the ashes of your fire and eat it with nothing on it. Beat 2 eggs into a skillet of gravy and see how far it goes. Or make a plate of tea cakes with 4 things out of your cabinet and hand one to a child. And then tell me down in the comments, what did your people make when there was nothing to make it from? What county were they in? And what did your grandmother call the meal that got you through the lean week? Somebody in your family stretched one hen across a whole table once, and I want to hear whose. That's the thing about all of it. These weren't recipes so much as they were arithmetic, done by women who could make 5 people believe they'd eaten well off of almost nothing. A whole science of plenty out of want, and it's closing down, one grandmother at a time. One thing before I go, and I'll only say it the once. Everything I know, everything on this channel, I'm putting in a book, sourced the way we do it here. Every claim with where it comes from, so it's written down and checkable before the last of us takes it into the ground. If you want it, it's at EzraCade.com. That's the only time you'll hear me say it. They knew. Now it's written down.